So, 2024. Who can believe we've made it this far? Especially with recent years. I know I can't. But it is a milestone year for two films that I would consider to be some of the most influential films of my childhood. We've got, first off, March 31st, 1999, was the release of The Matrix, celebrating its 25 years of its influence on cinema, and 20 years since the Joel Schumacher adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera. In this three-part series, I'm going to talk to you guys about why these movies somehow keep finding their way into a crossroads that eventually I pick up on. But let's start with The Matrix. Now, I was a hyper-feminine girly girl growing up. I loved Barbie, Monster High, Littlest Pet Shop, Winx Club, da-da-da-da-da, you name it. So I was very much of the mindset that action movies were for boys. And I wouldn't have even known about The Matrix if it weren't for my father, who is a big Matrix fan, introducing it to me by, how else? Dropping a Mr. Anderson reference at an opportune moment. But that stuck with me. And it wasn't until I think I was about 12, 13 years old that I actually saw it on TV with him. I think probably on the FX channel. And then I was kind of like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. Everything's all black and green. And there's a love story in it. So naturally, Neo and Trinity were the ones I first gravitated to in this movie because, again, I thought action movies were for boys. Girls can like action movies too, especially if there's something they can latch on to. But one thing I didn't realize until recent years, when I really started to kind of study up on it, for reasons we'll get to eventually, I didn't realize just how much of a cinematic influence it has had on pretty much every action movie ever since, but particularly the 2000s period. Even on a movie that I consider to be a relative guilty pleasure of mine, that I have fond memories of watching back in the day because I had a crush on its lead actor. I don't have a DVD or VHS copy of it or anything, but have you guys ever heard of a movie called Dracula 2000? Yeah, the Y2K Dracula was starring a fresh-faced Gerard Butler in the title role. Yeah, well, as somebody who, proudly admits to the fact that I had a crush on him growing up, and he was my first celebrity crush, in fact, and taught me what it was meant to have a celebrity crush. I, of course, took advantage of the fact that he got to be a vampire. But I didn't know until recently just how heavy, hardcore of a Matrix ripoff that movie freaking is. Oh my god. And a lot of this stuff I didn't even pick up on until, I watched YouTube reviews of it online, and then I started watching it for myself via a generous YouTube upload, which I will leave in the description for anyone else who wants to see it if YouTube lets me. I had to make a list. I have had to make a list. Alright? Okay. So first off, let's get the obvious out of the way. Dracula of this movie wears a trench coat. Long, flowy, pretty black trench coat. Which, there's some great quotes about, which I will get to later. But let's focus right here, right now. And I'm not even gonna lie, Gerard Butler makes it work. So much so, I think you could probably edit him into the Matrix and you would just think, oh look, I didn't know Gerard Butler was in the Matrix, that's awesome. It's like, no he wasn't, he's just accidentally ripping it off. There's the heist sequence, where Dracula's coffin is procured at the beginning of the movie past high-tech security. It's very much like the heist sequence at the end of towards the end of the Matrix when they go to rescue Morpheus. We got crossbow bullet time. Oh my god, there are literally crossbows that people... That's not a crossbow, whatever. just let off in this movie. They just go, like Terminator. It's like, oh my god. Oh, here's a good one. Kung Fu vampirism. Yes, apparently when Gerard Butler turns you into a vampire, you get Kung Fu powers with aerial fight scenes where people just going, whoa, flipping in the air. And I'm like, well, as far as being a vampire goes, that's pretty cool. We got the nu metal soundtrack, which personally I'm not overly familiar with, because I admit I was a child during that era. I was born in 99, just like the Matrix. Both of us turning 25. Woo! So that I've kind of had to have explained to me through a selection of videos and explanations, but, you know, you get the vibe. You get the vibe. There's the one-woman wailing trope. We will explain that. And which directly connects to its religious connotations. Because guess what? Spoiler alert, Dracula of this movie is Judas. Keanu Reeves was Kung Fu Jesus. Gerard Butler is Kung Fu Judas. Oh my god. But it doesn't even stop there. There's actually two things that I personally have picked up on that I don't think anybody else has. Number one, if you're familiar with the Matrix soundtrack, there's a song called Spy Break that plays when where they're all standing around that phone and they're waiting to be called into the Matrix. It's kind of like this like techno doop 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 doop. No, I'm not doing it, but whatever. There's a scene where Gerard Butler walks into a Virgin record store. God, I feel old even just saying that, even though I don't really have much familiarity with that. But there's a scene where he goes into a Virgin record store, and all the girls are trying to look at him, and they're like, oh my god, it's Gerard! Holy crap! And I swear to God, it's literally just Spy Break, poorly remixed. I have played both of them over each other at the same time, and you wouldn't be able to tell it's two different songs. They sound that much alike. But that's not even the best part. I think this movie matrixes so hard, they accidentally predicted an element of the eventual sequels. Let me explain. So after the whole big dramatic ass reveal that Dracula is Judas, complete with us like, oh my god, it's Judas! Not even kidding, you can listen to it on my creatively and emotionally effective music playlist. You can find that. Tell me I'm wrong. That's straight up what they do. But anyway, so he's talking to this like giant neon lights cross of Jesus, because this movie is not subtle. And he goes on this like under a minute long monologue where he goes, we all knew this would come to pass. It was my destiny to betray you, because you hated me. But now, I feed on the blood of your children. But I give them more than just eternal life. I give them what they crave most. All the pleasure you would deny them forever. And then he finishes it off by saying, you made the world in your image, and now I make it in mine. And I was like, hold up. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, wait a minute. Isn't that literally just Smith's motivation in the sequels? Oh my god. So I kind of started, no freaking way. I mean, it makes sense, going around turning people into vampires. Smith goes around, copying himself onto other people, going, you get to be me, you get to be, welcome to Oprah! Wasn't sure if that was going to work, and I'm not sure if it does or it doesn't, but... And at first I thought maybe I was just reaching. I was like, well, okay. I was like, okay, it's not like this is a new... What's the word? Motivation for villains. So at first I thought I was like, okay, maybe I'm just reaching. But then I realized, actually, no, I'm really not. Because how many villains do this in a monologue to Jesus? Seriously, I have read them both back to back, and I was like, oh my god, they really do have the same vibe, except, Dracula does his in, quite literally, not so many words compared to Smith. And I was like, oh my god. And, personally, because I think Dracula 2000 is one of the first, if not the first, movie to earnestly employ the idea of, oh, they work for the Wachowskis, why can't work for us? I say good for them. I was like, nice. It also explains more than a couple things we have going forward in a couple of my other parts, which we will get to, but I mean, the movie was even released at a religious holiday, because The Matrix was released at Easter. Dracula 2000, I kid you not, was released on December 22nd, 2000. I was like, oh wow. That must have made people happy when they found out he was Judas. Oh my god. I mean, according to Wikipedia, it says, quote, the studio hoped the film would counter-program against the season's rom-coms and dramas. Well, I mean, they certainly did that. But December 22nd, remember that date. It will come up again when we go forward here. Okay? But anyway, so some more recent content regarding Dracula 2000. I actually got to see it in this like little 2-part video called The Best and Worst of 90s Cool by Life of Slice. It's hard to say. And it was actually just cracked the top 10 of the worst of 90s cool. And it was like, well, I mean, at least it's being honored for it in some way, which I found amusing. But it doesn't quite get to just how many, quotes that I really appreciate about this movie's Matrixy qualities. And I want to share a few. We got, let's see, Cinema Crazed in 2012 said, much of it is influenced by The Matrix. So much of the vampire foes bred by Dracula flip around, jump off walls, and battle their foes with martial arts. How does being undead automatically grant you a black belt? Who the hell knows? But it's kind of cool, for being honest. We got John O'Brien for Sci-Fi Wire, back in 2020, wrote, no 2000 action movie would be complete without at least one nod to The Matrix. Not only does the Count silently stalk his prey wearing a black trench coat, always open to display his rock-hard abs, obviously, but several fight scenes throw in that well-worn bullet time effect, too. And then the piece de resistance, my favorite of them all. With his long black trench coat and incisory overbite, he's like Neo in The Matrix, played by one of the Bee Gees. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly, written on January 3rd, 2001. Shortly after the movie was released, and I was like, yes! There it is! There it is! Straight up! And it was this movie, it was his role as Dracula, that got Gerard Butler casted for Phantom of the Opera in the first place. Which, that I've already known for a few years because I read about it on the wiki page. Quote, director Joel Schumacher had been impressed with Gerard Butler's performance in Dracula 2000. And, yeah, which, my immediate thought when I read that on wiki, I was like, oh my god, that literally explains everything. Because yes, I known about him being Phantom and Dracula, but I just thought it was lucky. I didn't think there was an actual direct association. I was just like, good for you. And personally, whatever your thoughts are on both those movies, I still say good for you. Because how many actors in this day and age can say they have played both Dracula and the Phantom of the Opera? Two universal movie monsters. So, I still think that's something to be, applaud him for. Regardless of however they are. And the fact that both of these characters are very departed from their universal counterparts. Because, well, they were all like, yes, let's make him sexy. But it does, it explains so much. Like, for one thing, it explains why Eric, by the end of the movie, is just walking around with half his shirt open. It's like, oh, because he did that for, 80% of Dracula 2000. Makes sense. And I kind of see what they're going for. Because Andrew Lloyd Webber apparently said that he's supposed to be on the right side of danger in regards to Christine's attraction to him, and they want someone who is an unconventional singer. Because he's, an unconventional musician. He's essentially self-taught. But, Apparently it says, according to Collider, it was his performance in Dracula 2000 that drew Schumacher's eye, playing a darkly brooding, revenge-driven monster, which, again, I can see the appeal. And considering the fact that Joel Schumacher is the director of The Lost Boys, which Life of Slice I've seen point out that's more or less the generator of 90s cool, and obviously Andrew Lloyd Webber did Jesus Christ Superstar, I wouldn't be surprised also if Gerard's performance kind of drew them both in with this like, oh, this is something I've dabbled in. Very interesting. So the combination of both those factors made them go, we want him. We want this guy. We'll just teach him how to sing, which, more mixed results. I'm personally on the side of proud Gerard Butler Phantom Defender since the year 2010, I'll say. But, you can see why people had problems with it. I will talk eventually about how much I still love him. Because remember, it's the year of The Matrix and Phantom. And it's interesting to note, too, you gotta remember, Gerard Butler was not the first casting choice for Phantom. He was chosen following the likes of, not including but not limited to Michael Crawford, as they originally tried to get the movie made with Michael Crawford and Sarah Brightman, but then ALW divorced Sarah. Well, they got divorced. I don't know how that worked. But yeah, Michael Crawford, Antonio Banderas, Meatloaf, Heath Ledger, Matthew McConaughey, John Travolta, Hugh Jackman. And those are the names I've got from IMDb. And I was like, wow. I don't know, it's just very funny to me that he was the one they ended up pulling in because he used to be a Matrixy trenchcoat vampire. So that was kind of crazy. I was like, oh my god. I was like, wait, so him being this Neo from the Matrix playboy with the beach, he said, yeah, we want that. That's what we want for our sewer-dwelling Phantom Man. It's like, really goes to show you what they were going for when they made this movie, which, in hindsight, they were going for, let's make Aristine shippers so they'll support Love Never Dies, but we will get to that eventually, too. Okay? Alright. I think that's a good place to end part 1. Otherwise, I know I'm going to start going into part 2 and 3, and I'm trying to split this up into 3 parts. So, stay tuned for part 2 and 3, because we're not done yet. The rabbit hole goes deeper, I can assure you.